the dead of night in Seoul, a young woman was walking home alone. She was on the phone. Then, from the darkness, a man began quietly following her. She had never seen him before. He was a complete stranger, and moments later, the man closed in and suddenly spun her around. Before she could even process what was happening, the brutal attack began. At the time, serial killer Yoo Young-chul had just been arrested. People believed the long nightmare was finally over. But the killing was not over. On the dark streets of Seoul, another serial killer was already stalking the streets. About 2 years later, in the early hours of the morning, a man broke into a home in a quiet Seoul neighborhood. He had no idea that the house he had entered would become the final scene of a killing spree that had lasted more than 2 years. After his arrest, investigators uncovered the full horror: 25 separate crimes, 13 lives lost, and 20 others left behind with wounds that would never, ever heal. And yet, in court, he made a chilling statement. He said he felt depressed because he had not been able to kill more people, and he demanded that his own execution be carried out as soon as possible. His name was Jung Nam-gyu. His crimes did not begin overnight. Long before the killings began, he had already been in and out of prison for theft, robbery, and sexual offenses. But even after his release, he did not change. He had no steady job and no stable relationships. And over time, Jeong Nam-gyu began taking his anger and violent urges out on complete strangers. His targets included children, women, and people who were fast asleep. At first, Jeong Nam-gyu chose the dark streets of Seoul, places with few CCTV cameras and few people watching. But strangely, many of his attacks took place beneath streetlights or in places illuminated by motion-activated lights. Even in the dead of night, he often chose places where he could clearly see his victims. And there was a reason for that. Jeong Nam-gyu wanted to watch as fear and pain spread across his victims' faces. But a short time later, the media began reporting that a serial killer might still be operating in Seoul. And then, Jeong Nam-gyu disappeared from the streets. Had he stopped killing? No. He had simply changed where he attacked. He moved away from the dark streets and began entering homes while the people inside were asleep. On January 18, 2006, a father and his 3 children were asleep inside their 2-story home in Seoul. But in the early hours of the morning, Jeong Nam-gyu broke into their home. He went straight to a small bedroom, and there, while the younger daughter slept, he struck her with a blunt weapon. Then he gathered clothes and laundry, piling them in the living room and near the front door, and then he set them on fire. After stepping outside, he locked the front door behind him and fled the scene. Moments later, the father woke and realized the house was on fire, but by then, the flames were already out of control. He barely managed to climb through a window and onto the ledge outside, severely burned. He screamed for help. He kept crying out that his children were still trapped inside. But in the end, all 3 children lost their lives. Only the father survived, with critical burns across his body. And yet, when police found no sign of forced entry, suspicion quickly fell on him, the sole survivor of the fire. After losing all 3 of his children and suffering critical burns himself, he was questioned relentlessly. Investigators accused him of murdering his own family. Even after Jung Nam-gyu's confession revealed the truth, the police never offered the father a single word of apology. Around this time, another disturbing change appeared in the way Jeong Nam-gyu committed his crimes. At first, he had relied on knives, but gradually, he began using blunt weapons instead. Why the change? Profilers believed he made the switch to experience a much stronger thrill. Jung Nam-gyu later confessed that when he stabbed his victims, They collapsed too quickly. He said he found that boring, but when he used a blunt weapon, the attack lasted longer and gave him a far greater rush. That was what he reportedly told investigators. On April 22, 2006, Jung Nam-gyu was finally captured. Late that night, he once again broke into another family's home, and just as he had before, he made his way into a small bedroom. Inside, a man in his 20s was fast asleep, weapon in hand. Jung Nam-gyu struck the man in the head, but this time, he picked the wrong house. The victim jolted awake and immediately lunged at Jeong Nam-gyu, fighting back with everything he had. The victim's father, who had been sleeping in the next room, heard his son's screams and rushed inside. Together, the father and son fought for their lives and finally overpowered him. But then, something almost unbelievable happened. When police arrived, they somehow let him slip right through their fingers, right outside the house. Police launched a search of the surrounding area, and with help from local residents, they caught him again about 2 hours later. But even more shocking was the way he behaved after his arrest. Sitting in the back of the police car, he muttered that his only regret was that he had not killed 1,000 people. And as he said those words, with a smirk on his face, he looked almost demonic. Meanwhile, the forensic team made a crucial discovery. A pattern on a glove recovered from his belongings matched a glove mark found at a recent murder scene. And that was not all. Investigators also found traces of blood from earlier victims on his blunt weapon. But one crucial piece of evidence was still missing: the sharp weapon he had used to attack women on the streets. Investigators searched Jung Nam-gyu's home once again, and finally, they found the weapon hidden inside a closet. In that moment, the cases that had remained unsolved for more than 2 years finally began to come to light. His crimes left 13 people dead and 20 others seriously injured. Some of the survivors were left with permanent disabilities and faced staggering financial burdens from repeated surgeries and ongoing treatment. But during the investigation, another chilling confession came to light. On January 14, 2004, in Gyeonggi Province, 2 elementary school students went missing and were later found dead. Jung Nam-gyu confessed that this had been his first murder. The 2 children were reportedly found, bound to a tree with shoelaces. When investigators asked him why, Jung Nam-gyu claimed that when he was young, someone had tied him up with shoelaces and abused him. But that was nothing more than an excuse to justify his own crimes. Later, the court sentenced Jung Nam-gyu to death. But even on death row, he showed absolutely no remorse. He even submitted a petition to the court, and its contents were deeply disturbing. He wrote that he wanted to kill every surviving victim. He claimed that he had been happiest when he was killing, and that the reality of never being able to kill again had left him deeply depressed. So, he asked for his execution to be carried out immediately. Those were the words written in his petition. In the end, he carried out one final killing inside prison. His final victim was none other than himself. Was he unable to face the reality that he could no longer hurt anyone else? We may never know the exact reason, but one thing is certain: he never took responsibility for the lives he had shattered. Even at the very end, he made a cowardly and selfish choice. And that brings us to the end of today's story. If you found today's video compelling, please consider subscribing and leaving a like. This has been The Hidden Archive.